costs on Russia for its repression, human rights abuses, and aggression against Ukraine. The Department of Commerce is adding more than 90 companies to the entity list for their activities in support of Russia's defense, industrial base, and war effort. And the Department of State is designating 3 Russian individuals who were connected to Navalny's imprisonment and the Russian government's harsh treatment of him. The U.S. government has designated over 4,000 entities and individuals in response to Russia's war on Ukraine over the past 2 years, the strongest set of sanctions ever imposed on a major economy. And we will continue. We will continue to take actions to ensure Mr. Putin pays a steeper price for his aggression abroad, the repression at home. At the same time, we need House Republicans to join us in standing up to Putin and to take action by passing the National Security Supplemental Bill to ensure we can continue to support Ukraine. Time is of the essence, and Ukraine cannot afford for House Republicans to continue to delay. Before I continue, we will have the week ahead later to all of you. I don't have that in front of me at this time, but obviously we'll share that with all of you. Go ahead, T.
Thanks, Green. We've heard some sharp words from the President and yourself, criticism of the Speaker for not bringing Ukraine aid to the floor. Has the President reached out directly to the Speaker at all since their last conversation a month ago?
So I have a call to read out to you about a call between the President and the Speaker. Look, I want to be very clear here. We've been, and it's been clear to all of you, and you've all reported this as well. We know for a fact that if this bill, this national security supplemental, were to go to the floor, it would get bipartisan support. This is in the House, obviously. And we know that House Republicans would support this. We know that House Democrats would support this. All he needs to do, all the Speaker needs to do, is bring this to the floor. It will get support instead of playing political games here, instead of playing political stunts. And you all have reported, I believe, Politico reported how there is no direction for this Republican caucus in the House. They don't have a plan, and it's easy to do. This is something, and I'm going to be really blunt here, lives are at stake. If you think about what's happening in Ukraine, if you think about what's happening in the Middle East, lives are at stake here. This is about saving lives, and they can get this done. This is also about the national security of the American people. So if he truly stands with the American people, he would get this done. Put it on the floor. It will get bipartisan support. Put it on the floor. Stop playing political games.
In your talk, you mentioned the Alabama decision. Is there any actions that the federal government can take or is looking at taking to try to help women who are trying to get impeachment for services, particularly this hospital network that stopped the practice?
I mean, look, I don't have anything to share at this time. I know you're asking me, are there any policy actions, right, that we can take from here? Look, what we will say here is that the fix here is Roe v. Wade. That's the fix. That's how we get to a place where we fix what's going on and stop the chaos that we're seeing in these states. That's the fix. It is a legislative fix that needs to come from Congress. That's what we need to get to a place to. I don't have anything to announce here, but it is unimaginable of what families are now having to deal with and how this could spread to other states. And this is the chaos that comes from the Dobbs decision, that comes from what Republicans have been doing since the Dobbs decision. And so we have to get this right. We have to get this fixed by making sure Congress acts and makes Roe the law of the land. The court's got it wrong. The court's got it wrong in this.
And then last for me, last month the President said that he would not have any additional executive authority to act on with regards to the border. He met with governors this morning where he apparently told them that he was looking and talked to his lawyers and seemed frustrated with his lawyers as he's trying to devise some executive actions. There's been some reporting that in the last couple of days as well. So is the President currently contemplating additional executive actions on the border? What are they and when will we see them?
So look, we don't have any actions to announce today, no decisions, and this is something that I've actually spoken to the President about. No decisions have been made on this. Here's what we know, and here's the bottom line. There is no executive action that the President can take, no matter how aggressive it could be, can deliver the significant policy reforms and additional resources that Congress could have provided that Republicans rejected, right? There's no actions that he could take that would have been, that would be as tough, as fair as this bipartisan legislation that came out of the Senate, obviously, that we worked on for months. And that's what would have actually dealt with this, what was happening at the border, dealt with the immigration situation, and this is what Republicans rejected. And so, look, I don't have any decisions to make at this time. What we believe is that piece of legislation that came out, a bipartisan piece of legislation that came out of the Senate, that would have been the way to move forward here. And again, Republicans in the House decided to block that. They decided to go a political direction. They decided on issues, on policies that were included in there that they believed in, that they, at one point, believed that's how to move forward to deal with the border. They rejected it. And so, again, don't have anything to announce at this time or any decisions, to be even more clear, and decisions have been made right now. But we had something on the table that came out of the Senate in a bipartisan way, and they rejected it, meaning the Republicans in the House.
Thanks, Corinne. On the Alabama IVF ruling, how concerned should American families be that this could spread to other conservative states? And does this president need to do more than simply calling for the codification of Roe versus Wade? Does he need to go further here, since this does deal with a separate issue?
And I hear your question here. Yeah, they should be concerned. They should be concerned. On your first part of your question, they should be concerned that this could spread in other states. This is the chaos that has come out of the Dobbs decision. This is the chaos that has come out of getting rid of Roe, which was the law of the land for almost 50 years. And so, look, what needs to happen, I mean, the way that we fix this, or the way that we get to a place where women feel protected, where women can make decisions on their own body, where families can make a decision on how to move forward in growing their family or starting a family, is to get Roe v. Wade needs to be the law of the land. That's the fix. That's what needs to happen. That is the best way to move forward here.
And on the border deal, the president had earlier said that he was out of options when it comes to executive actions. Does the fact that he's considering other actions mean that there was more he could have done earlier. So what changed?
I'm going to be very clear. Bottom line, the only way we could have move forward in a effective, more comprehensive way was to move forward with the bipartisan legislation that came out of the Senate. That was the way that we believe would have been it was one of the toughest, one of the fairest bipartisan border security bills that we have seen in decades. It would have dealt with giving resources that's needed at the border. It would have dealt with dealing with policy issues that relates to immigration, and that's the way we should have moved forward. A couple of things that it would have done: establish a more efficient process for asylum claims with consequences for those who do not have a legal basis to remain in the United States, provide more resources to secure the border and process claims, border patrol agents, law enforcement personnel, and detection technology to combat fentanyl trafficking, asylum officers and immigration judges, make our country safer, our border more secure, while treating people fairly and humanely, consistent with our values as a nation. Republicans rejected this bipartisan agreement that came out of the Senate. That's something that the president worked with in a bipartisan way, obviously with Republicans and Democrats in the Senate for months. They rejected that. And we believe that is the direction. That is the bottom line for us. That's the way we should move forward. I don't have anything to announce or any decisions that's been made.
Yeah. Roe versus Wade versus trying to protect women's rights to IVF treatment. They are two separate things. So is the administration looking at protections for the latter?
Look, don't have anything to share on any policy changes or any policy updates for all of you, but we have to understand how this started. This started because of what happened with Roe, the Dobbs decision to overturn Roe, something that was Roe was constitutional for almost 50 years, and that got overturned. And the moment that got overturned, that day, Republicans started to work and take action. I just mentioned 380 pieces of legislation to go against difficult decisions that women need to make about their bodies, about their family, about how they're going to move forward, about the care that they need. 380 pieces of legislation across the country. That's what is happening. That's what's happening right now. And so the chaos has been started. It was started the day that happened, the day Roe was overturned. And the only way to fix this, the best way to fix this, is to restore Roe.
Thank you, Corinne. The president made an appeal this morning to the governors at the White House, asking them to kind of go back to their states and talk to their congressional lawmakers about passing the Ukraine aid bill. I'm wondering if that is sort of the next course of action, where you're thinking about targeting the Speaker and top House Republicans in their districts.
I mean, look, the president had opportunity to engage with governors of both parties, which is something that he does yearly, and they have important items to speak to on the agenda. And obviously, this is an issue that governors care about. We know that even with the bipartisan deal for the border security, obviously that came out of the Senate, we got support from governors. We got letters from governors. We got letters from that included mayors from the cities that were being affected. So we know that we got support from them. And so one way, obviously, to get the Speaker to do his job and put it on the floor and actually take it up is for governors to speak up as well. And I believe that they have. Obviously, the letter was a key part of that. And so, look, there are many items on the agenda to discuss. This is something that's important when you think about immigration, when you think about what's happening at the border and how it's affecting these states, these governors. So yeah, I think it's important for one way the president to show leadership is to also say, and governors to show leadership is to be very clear what this means to them, to their constituents back at home.
Are you planning to follow up with them in the next week if they have had those conversations?
Well, we've been in regular touch with governors. Obviously, there was $1 billion that we were able to secure to help governors deal with the migrant situation, the migrant issue over the past several months. So we've been in constant communication with governors, with mayors, and so those conversations continue. What you were able to see is the president leaning in and showing how important it is to move with the bipartisan deal as it relates to the border, obviously border security, and also obviously the national security supplemental. Since we are speaking about the two-year anniversary tomorrow of Ukraine being attacked by Russia. So all of these things are important. We're talking about our national security, the importance of our national security for the American people, and we're also talking about our border and what we need to do to make sure that we deal with the border challenges.
I have a quick one on the meeting that he had in California with Navalny's family. We did see the readout that you put out. The president has spoken a little bit on it. So what specific assurances did he offer you? Because the sanctions package was already in the works, right, to mark the anniversary of the two-year war. What did he tell the family that he could do to protect them? I mean, did he advise her not to go back to Russia?
I'm going to be really careful and not speak to a private conversation that the president had. That is something that we don't do here. I'm not going to go beyond the readout. But yes, was the sanction package in motion before Navalny's death? Yes, as you know, tomorrow will be a two-year anniversary. But we added to the package. Obviously, added additional sanctions once we learned about Navalny's death. So both are true. In this case, both can be true and are true. And so I just am not going to go beyond a conversation, a private conversation. I'm just not going to do that. Obviously, it is her decision to make. I'm just not going to get into private conversations. Okay?
Border deal aside, the White House is actively discussing taking executive action on the border, as the governors mentioned earlier today, and as we've reported. So why now? Is the border deal just a jumping off point to new executive actions that the president can take?
Look, I'm not going to comment on any individual policy option that's being speculated in the media. I'm just not going to do that. What we have been very clear, the bottom line is the way to have moved forward was with this border deal. That's
There's
the way.
Executive actions that are now being considered that weren't considered.
I'm not going to get into any policy discussions that are possibly happening or how however it's being reported. I'm just not going to get into that. What I could say is the bottom line here, we believe no executive action, no matter how aggressive it could be or could look, it would have been as significant as the border deal that came out of the Senate in a bipartisan way. No action. And let's not forget, Republicans rejected that. And so don't have anything to go on beyond that.
On Alabama, what's your message to the clinics in Alabama that have proactively paused IVF treatments? Are they making the right call?
Look, I can't speak to the decisions that the clinics are making. That is for them. There are, there's safety concerns, there's legal concerns that they have to weigh and decide on. What we can speak to is the chaos that has been created because of the overturning of Roe, and we see this, and it is devastating. It is devastating. It is dangerous to women. And so what we're going to do is continue to speak out against that and make it very clear that the court decision that was made was wrong. And yeah, you know what? This could spread. This could go beyond Alabama, and that is a scary thought for many families across the country, certainly many women across the country.
Last question. You mentioned there's no readout with the president and the House Speaker. One of the messages in the G7 call, according to John Kirby, will be that the president will do everything he can to get Congress to pass that funding. Has there been any reach out from the White House to try to get a call or a meeting in the books, since he is the person between that funding?
I get the question, but let's not forget the past several months, NSC and other parts of obviously the president's administration have had regular conversation. You've heard Jake Sullivan speak to going over to the House and the Senate to talk to Republicans and Democrats about the aid, about the importance of the Ukraine aid. You've heard that conversation. You've heard him say this from this podium. And we also know that there is bipartisan support. We saw it coming out of the Senate, and there's bipartisan support in the House. With the Speaker, the pressure here needs to be on the Speaker. The Speaker needs to do his job and actually take this up, put it to the, if he were to put it to the floor, it would have bipartisan support. But we've been doing our job. We've been having those conversations with congressional members. And it's unfortunate that the Speaker chooses to turn this into a political football here. This is not what this is about. This is about our national security. This is about the American people. Okay.
On the sanctions that were implemented, what makes these sanctions any more effective than the hundreds announced before?
Yeah, so a couple of things I just mentioned. So first of all, these sanctions are cumulative, so we have to look at it in that way. These are 500 new targeted sanctions that are now being sanctioned. The targets are being sanctioned for the first time, so that's important to note. These targets are within Russia's defense industrial base, its financial system, and it will continue to impose costs on Russia to make it harder to carry out its brutal war and vicious war in Ukraine. We will continue to make sure that we hold Putin's aggression accountable and raise the cost on his, on not just him, but also his enablers. But we also, as I've stated, we need Congress to act. They need to do their job. They need to provide the assistance that Ukrainians need to continue to fight Putin's brutal war. That's what they need to do. They need to be able to make sure that we provide Ukrainians with the assistance to defend themselves. And so we are continuing to urge the Speaker. Again, if the Speaker were to put this on the floor, we would see a bipartisan support for the national security bill.
I guess asked another way, you've been, there have been 4,000 sanctions now in the last 2 years. It hasn't stopped the war. So to what extent, or how should the success of these sanctions even be measured?
So look, no, we get the question. Look, we believe they've been effective, right? That's what we believe. The goal of sanction and export control is to increase the cost of Mr. Putin and his enablers. And it's clear that our sanctions and imports controls are having an impact. And so, and it's not just them. It's obviously Russia had been forced because of we're raising the stakes on Russia and his enablers. We see Russia being forced, right, to turn to countries like Iran and North Korea to get the arms and ammunition it needs to carry out this war. I want to just lay out an example from Bloomberg. Bloomberg reported last month that Russia's government has tapped almost half of the national wealth funds available reserves as it pours money into its defense budget at the expense of Russia's other needs. When you think about Putin's own oils are, they have he's linked the fact that Russia has been forced to sell its oil at heavily discounted prices to our coalition's increased enforcement of oil price cap in recent months. So we have seen the impact. We believe, again, this is cumulative. What we were able to sanction, again, 500 additional targets, and we believe that it has had an impact on
the Alabama IVF ruling, you have spoken out just here forcefully about it. The Vice President did yesterday and continues to on her national tour. The President tweeted about it and issued a written statement. Yeah. When might we see him more publicly speak out about this issue? We keep hearing from voters and Democrats who say, where is he on this? Why isn't he talking about an issue of such urgent concern? Presidential focus time statement in public instead of on paper is very different than sending you out here or tweeting about it or sending the Vice President on the road.
I mean, look, Ed, I think the president has spoken about what the attack on reproductive rights, what the attack on women being able to make choices on behalf of their own health care and getting the health care that they need, the action that he has taken, whether it's executive actions and what obviously his agencies have been able to do, DOJ, HHS. I mean, those have been done because of this president. And he's spoken to this many times. The day that Roe was overturned, you heard from the president. The president was the only person that spoke to this on that day. And I would argue that a statement from the president is incredibly powerful, is important. He spoke to this through his statement. And the president has been very clear where he stands. He believes that we need to continue to protect women's right to make a decision, reproductive health decision, pardon me. And that's where we're going to continue to be. That's where he's going to continue to be. And we've been very clear about that.
We've asked about this before. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus is once again concerned they are not being brought in to conversations about potential executive orders and other actions taken by the White House, saying that what they're reading about at least is unacceptable to them and they haven't had much dialogue with the White House about it. Are there any plans to remedy that?
So first, no decisions have been made. I want to be very, very clear about that again. And I would say that we are in regular communication, regular contact with members of the Hispanic Caucus, members of the Progressive Caucus, just members of...
Well, they claim they're not.
from my understanding, and I've asked about this, we've been in regular communications with them, and so obviously we respect congressional members. We work very closely with them on many issues. We've been in regular communication and regular contact. We just don't have any decisions to make on any executive actions. We just don't have any decisions that have been made, and that may be why they haven't been talked to about that particular issue. But I would say, as it relates to immigration, as it relates to what we've been trying to do, certainly as it related to the bipartisan agreement that came out of the Senate, we were in regular discussion. No decision has been made. No decision has been made here. Okay.
Thank you. We know what the governors told us, that the president told them about the border and what he's considering with regards to executive actions. Just for the sake of clarity, can you tell us what the president told them?
I'm just not going to go into conversations. I'm just not. The governors can speak for themselves. I'm just not going to go into it.
Okay. And Tammy Duckworth, the senator from Illinois, is talking about legislation that could protect IVF at the federal level. If Congress were to pass legislation to protect IVF, would President Biden sign it?
I have not seen the legislation. I have not talked to our Office of Legislative Affairs about it, so I want to be super careful here. Obviously, Tammy Duckworth, senator, is a close colleague, someone we've worked very closely with. So I just would need to talk to our Office of Legislative Affairs. We believe the best way, honestly, to get this done, as it relates to the chaos that has been created, is to get Roe to become law of the land, and that's something Congress can do. I want to be careful. I just don't want to speak to that particular legislation.
And are you actively trying to get